All right, it's the top of the hour, so welcome everyone to the school safety webinar sponsored by CrisisGo and Shooter Detection Systems. My name is Kendra Noonan, and I'm the Director of Communications for SDS and your moderator for today's webinar. Before we begin, I just want to say a big thank you to the school district administrators and law enforcement professionals that have taken the time out to join us today. What you have had to endure during this long year by taking on virus mitigation in addition to your public and school safety responsibilities must be incredibly overwhelming. And I personally commend you for keeping your head up and continuing to seek out education and strategies to mitigate active shooter risk in the midst of all that's going on in this crazy year. So today we'll be talking about how the active shooter threat never rests and how important communication is during shooting incidents, and how your school or community can use technologies like gunshot detection and mass notification to strongly improve active shooter detection and response. As the presentation goes along, we invite you to enter questions into the Q&A chat anytime. However, we will hold answering all questions for the Q&A session at the end of our speaker presentations. And before we get going, I do have one quick warning for you. One of the technologies we're talking about today is gunshot detection, and therefore you may hear gunshots during this presentation. Although this might be alarming, rest assured that what you will hear is a recording as a part of a pre-recorded demo and are not live gunshots. So our speakers today are Kelly Moore and Brent Tsuda. Kelly is the Director of Safety Leadership for CrisisGo. Kelly was previously the Safety Coordinator for the Santa Barbara Unified School District, as well as former commander with the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office, with over 30 years of experience in law enforcement. Kelly has extensive experience in large-scale emergency management and response, and he has responded to several large-scale wildland fires as a manager and/or unified commander. Kelly's experience in school safety includes making extensive improvements in the safety of the schools of Santa Barbara Unified School District, including revising and standardizing all of their schools' emergency operations plans, implementing the CrisisGo emergency communications and alerting platform, and developing and implementing the first ever school threat assessment response team. Brent is the sales director for the Western United States for Shooter Detection Systems and our gunshot detection subject matter expert. For the past 20 years, Brent has dedicated his career to bringing his customers security solutions that keep their businesses running and their people safer. As a previous enterprise account executive at Everbridge, Brent enjoyed empowering clients to communicate and interact with their audience no matter what the size, and especially during critical incidents. Brent brings his knowledge of emergency communications and a passion for safety and security to his role with Shooter Detection Systems and works out of the greater Los Angeles area. Welcome, gentlemen. And now, Kelly, I'll hand it off to you to get us started today. You can go ahead and start screen sharing.
Perfect. Thank you, Kendra. Welcome, everybody. And what we're going to talk a little bit about today is how the integration between CrisisGo's alert platform and the shooter detection system, how that really enhances our school's warning and notifications capabilities. So as Kendra said, my name is Kelly Moore. I'm the Director of Safety Leadership for CrisisGo, and we're an emergency communications, notification, and emergency management tool. Just a little bit about me. I know Kendra introduced me, and she did a great job. And my primary functions with the CrisisGo company is really giving the perspective of law enforcement and emergency responders to the platform. So I work with our customers and trying to assist them establish protocols, good sound protocols, and emergency operations plans and so forth. I assist CrisisGo and our customers with the onboarding process and process development. And I also assist with threat assessments and behavioral interventions in creating that collaborative environment and team to address behaviors and threats before they become an issue. One thing that I have the unfortunate experience of I have responded to two separate active shooter incidents, one at a postal facility and one at a college community here in Santa Barbara County. And I was the incident commander for the one in Isla Vista. And so I come with a unique perspective, and that's kind of what I'm going to try to help share today. So let's get started. Before I do, let me just give a real quick overview of what it is that we do. We have a mobile communications platform that has the capability to be putting on a desktop or a mobile device where you can press a button and alert people within your school, within your community, including first responders, school administrators, district officials, and so forth. And we call for assistance. We can communicate back and forth. It's a two-way communication, and we can ask for help. We can give real-time intelligence and use multimedia features where you can send pictures, video, voice messages, and so forth. And we can also locate people within the incident. And a great feature for our communities, both business and the school systems, we can set automatic escalations. So when you press the alert, it automatically, by design, notifies people that you wanted to notify. So you don't have to worry about calling district people right after you call 911 and those types of things. It can do that and notify people automatically. All right, so this is, I'm not going to go over all of these, and I know you guys are saying, oh, thank God, but these are all of our components. There are a couple of new ones that we've added. Threat assessment management is part of our full suite now, as is the safety iPass, which was developed in response to the COVID, and it allows students, teachers, parents, visitors to self-certify and gain entry into a school campus or business for that matter. So let's move on to the active shooter use case that we're going to work through today. A little bit, I want to give a little bit of a foundation so that we're all on the same playing field, same level. So let's first start off with the basics, right? What is an active shooter? Per the FBI, an active shooter is an individual actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a populated area. And this says an individual, but it could be multiple, and it could be in multiple locations as well. An active shooter in a business and a school are treated very similarly in nature from the emergency response perspective. Technically, they're both workplace violence incidents, and the primary difference is who our victims are and how we treat them and the volume of treatment and emotionally where their standing is in our society, right? So we're talking about in a school shooting, the victims are students and staff, whereas in a workplace business environment, we're talking about employees and customers as our intended victims. So that's the primary difference. And in fact, we talk about active shooters, and most of us automatically start looking at, or gravitating towards a school incident. But it's important that we understand that about 40% of our active shooter cases are not at schools. So there's more incidents outside of the school environment than are realized inside our environment. As responders, and I'm going to say first responders quite a bit here, but also understand the perspective of the immediate responder. The immediate responder is anybody who's there when the incident triggers off. So we're talking in a school situation, we're talking about students, staff, visitors, parents, whoever's there who can help us with our goal and achieving our goal. We are 20 years past Columbine, and we still are struggling with what to do once we press the panic button or the help button that says, come help me. We have a lot of schools that have progressed very far, but we have a lot that are just barely scratching the surface in their capabilities of responding to an incident before emergency services get there. And I think we'll see that trend coming because our goal is very simple. Stop the killing, stop the dying, start the healing, right? And when we're talking about stopping the killing is what can we do to isolate somebody, an active shooter, without putting ourselves in harm, but do we have an ability to lock them in a stairwell or minimize or mitigate the potential damage? Can we evacuate people from one side of campus when the shooter's on the other side of campus? Those types of things. Start or stop the dying, right? That's getting people who have been injured into an area of safety after the shooter has moved on. Can we get them in and start applying dressings and working through medical like tourniquets and wound packing and stop the bleed type stuff. If you guys haven't learned stop the bleed techniques, it's very simple to learn. You can do it online in a matter of a few minutes and so forth. But then we also have to start, as soon as we stop the killing and stop the dying, is we have to start addressing the healing process, both physically and emotionally. And so what we're saying is our response doesn't stop when the incident stops. Our response now shifts to a whole community approach and the emotional toll that these types of incidents bring on. And when we look at how do we start addressing this, and this is where we start looking at setting our priorities. And in public safety, we talk about the life safety continuum or the life safety process. And what we're talking about is our first priority is to protect life, prevent or mitigate injury. Then we go on to stabilizing the incident. And then we start looking at protecting property, if that's even an issue in this type of event. But those are our priorities, and they will come into play when we start looking at notifications and other procedures. Our actions, when second counts, are crucial to saving lives. Our top priority, obviously, in any crisis or emergency is taking steps that protect lives. And what I like to call this is getting people into process or getting them moving into a protective action, an emergency protective action. And what those are things like evacuation, lockdowns, lockouts, secure, whatever it is that has the ability for us to protect ourselves and those we are responsible for. So if you guys are familiar with the I Love You Guys Foundation, they have standard response protocols. And so we're talking about in their system, evacuations, shelter, lockdown, secure, and hold are all examples of those emergency protective actions. That being said, any action we take is really in an effort to protect ourselves is an emergency protective action. So in the ones in the previous example, the evacuate, shelter, lockdown, secure, those are examples of standard responses that we have. But we also, most of us are familiar with the run, hide, fight, or the avoid, deny, defend protocols, depending on what part of the country you're from. But fighting is an emergency protective action when that's your only option, when you have to defend yourself or defend the people under your care. So anything that helps you protect yourself is an emergency protective action. So when we're talking about run, hide, fight, and avoid, deny, defend, those are all options during this type of event. Many of us will be familiar with this, but have we really thought about what this means to people and when and how we use this? If we haven't, then we need to start thinking about that. How do we decide which emergency protective action is appropriate during an active shooter incident? The quick answer is anything that'll save lives. And don't get caught up on, well, this is what I was trained. When we're in a crisis, we have to look at what the situation is that we're faced with and what's the best action for me and those that I'm responsible for. Right? And as an example, we have run, hide, fight, right? For you personally, running might be an option. But if you have 30 first graders, that might not be an option anymore. It might be, but it might not be. So we'll have to figure that out and work through that and understand that all of these take training and drilling and questions being answered and asked and answered and so forth. So you need to work through these processes so that you understand what it is. So lockdown, evacuation, shelter, secure, are those all options in an active shooter incident? The answer to that is yes. It really depends on the circumstances that you're faced with. The emergency protective action that someone takes is dependent upon their own individual circumstances, right? Right now, we teach everyone, at least the schools that I've been associated with, we teach them in an active shooter lockdown. But those really might not be the best option if you are completely away from the actual incident. If the incident is on the football field and you're all the way across campus in a library, you might not want to sit there. You might want to evacuate, but you need to have a plan. So it really depends on your circumstances, the proximity you are to the assailant, your physical and emotional capabilities. And those are different, right? Because some people are physically capable, but emotionally they haven't worked through this process. So they might not be emotionally capable of doing something. The number of people that you're responsible for. If it's just you, it makes the decisions a whole lot easier. If it involves other people that you're responsible for, then it complicates things. Your escape route, your defensible space, the ability to communicate with people, all of these things are variables. Most of us would agree that the best place to be in an active shooter incident is somewhere else, right? But like I said, right now at a school system, most of them that I'm associated with, we teach them to lock down. And what we're not really doing is explaining why we lock down, when we lock down, how we lock down. And we need to get better at that. And so going back over that is really, if we have the ability to evacuate or escape or remove ourselves from where the active shooter is, we have a better chance at survival than just waiting for somebody to come get us, right? And so take a moment, work through that, understand where you are at most of the times. Most of us in law enforcement go through this process very quickly, very easily, and oftentimes we do it without even thinking about it any longer. So how do we initiate an emergency protective action? In the CrisisGo world, we press a button and it alerts everyone. But you need to start asking in your current situation, are you able to initiate a warning, an alert, should an active shooter be at every, depending on the location in your campus? Is your current warning system the PA system or a bell system? Is everyone going to understand what is happening to them, what you want them to do? Or are they going to have to try to figure out, what did they say? How did they want, what did they want me to do? Those types of things. But remember, people want to know two things, right? Primarily, they want to know what you want them to do, and they also want to know what's happening. So, and they want to know it in that order, right? Because we're talking about life safety again. What do you want me to do? And then we can tell them what's happening so that we can get them to start preparing themselves. And in many cases, once they know what's happening, even in high stress situations, once they understand what's happening, oftentimes their anxiety is reduced. It's more important to tell them to take an emergency protective action than it is to tell them why they need to take that. And like I said, this is a life safety priority. And so get them moving into what you want them to do to protect themselves, and then follow that up with why they're doing it. And if you have to pick between alerting and getting in, moving into an emergency protective action and calling 911, alert first. Because even in best case scenarios, we're 2-3 minutes away from response. So make sure that we get them moving into that emergency protective action, and then we can call 911. In many cases, in CrisisGo's case, we can do that almost simultaneously. We can do that in a matter of seconds. So you see what's happening, you press your alert, it goes out to everyone simultaneously. And so we're talking very, very quickly. So the 3 phases of crisis response by people, according to Amanda Ripley, who assisted with the development of Avoid, Defend, or Deny, Defend out of the Alert project in Texas, is many people, the perception is that they panic and they get into this flight or fight stage very quickly. But really what they're doing is processing, especially if somebody's frozen. They're trying to figure out what's going on. And so the 3 stages are denial. They deny that disaster is happening. And the way they do this is, that was a car backfiring. Those were fireworks. That was construction noise 2 blocks over. In fact, in the Isla Vista shooting that I managed in 2014, almost everyone that we talked to didn't realize there was a shooting until it was right upon them. But if they were on the perimeter and they didn't actually see the shooter, then they thought it was fireworks. Almost every one of them. So they were sitting there, oh, that's fireworks, that's fireworks. They were denying what it actually was. The next stage is deliberation. Okay, now they've recognized that there's an issue and that what is happening. Now they need to decide what to do. And if you don't have an existing plan or you haven't trained for this, this is very difficult to work through, because now you're in a stress stage, and all of your stress is flowing through your veins literally, and it's causing you to lose your fine motor skills, your fine detail thinking ability. And now you get into that flight or fight, and you either react to addressing the problem or you run, and oftentimes you just run until you feel safe. And then there's this decisive moment. Once the decision is made to act, you need to act quickly and decisively based upon what your decision was. If your decision was to remove yourself, then you need to do that. If it was to address the shooter, then you need to do that, but you need to do that very quickly. Why is this important? Because CrisisGo can alert very quickly. And it, like I said, 3 or 4 seconds goes out through the entire district. When I first used, the very first time I used CrisisGo was in Drill, the Great Shakeout, which is today, coincidentally. And I did that for our entire district, and we notified about 1,000 people in less than 5 seconds. So that's the speed and capabilities of that. The problem is you have to press the button, right? And so if you're in this denial, deliberation, decisive moment phasing, and you're working through that, you're wasting time. So this is where the integration with our partners at Shooter Detection Systems can have a profound effect on how quickly people get notified. So let's walk through a quick use case and figure out exactly what it is that we need to do and how this, and we can see an example of how this is working. So today, I'd like to start our walkthroughs on today and time for you. Think about where you would be today, what you would be doing, and kind of work through this. It will be a school incident, but kind of work through it from your perspective and figure out what you would be doing given the circumstances, right? An angry parent at this current time and the husband of a school staff member enters the office. There's a current and valid restraining order on file. So you're aware that this person is an issue and can be an issue. Andy, we'll call him, the husband, is demanded to see both his wife and his child in violation of the restraining order. After several minutes, attempts to calm down seem to be working. So there is no call made to the police because they believe they have the situation under control. After several minutes of talking with Andy, Andy decides he's done talking and he turns around and leaves the office. Several minutes later, after the commotion has subsided, Andy returns to the office with a rifle and begins to shoot indiscriminately throughout the office and starts to walk to the front of the office, or from the front of the office towards the rest of the building. He now has purpose. He's had it. He's executing his plan that he's obviously devised early on. If the school is equipped with the Guardian sensor system from Shooter Detection System, those sensors are integrated throughout the school, and they're also integrated into our comprehensive alerting and crisis communications platform. If you have this system integrated together, we can definitely, and when we go back to talking about seconds matter in this case, and literally that's the case, we can have a profound impact on saving lives. So this is a video that I want to show, and as we go through this, think about where you might be in this scenario. Look at, on the left is the sensor, and on the right is our CrisisGo, but these sensors are placed throughout the building, and they have that ability, right?
Lockdown, locks, lights, out of sight. Lockdown, locks, lights, out of sight. Lockdown, locks, lights, out of sight.
So as you can see, this took the human element out of it. It was triggered by the gunshot. So there is no deliberation, there is no denial, there is no need for anyone to make that decisive moment decision and say, I need to press that alert. And understand that that process continues, is a continual process, that those 3 stages. As the incident unfolds, you may be faced with that several times. So taking that human element out of it has the ability to notify very, very quickly in a matter of seconds. And we can actually capitalize and leverage both systems when they're together. So with that, I think we're going to move it to Brent.
Yes, thank you so much, Kelly. That was a really great presentation. And yes, we will move on to Brent now, who's going to tell us more about the Guardian system from Shooter Detection Systems. So Brent, if you're ready, you can go ahead and take over the screen share.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right. Hopefully you guys can see that, my screen.
That's great.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kendra. Thank you as well, Kelly. Great job on that. You know, I've been doing this active shooter stuff for quite a long time, and it's amazing. Every single time I see a presentation like this, I'm always learning something new. So thank you very much. Great nuggets of information there. So good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you guys might be. I know we have folks all over the country here joining the webinar, so thank you very much for joining. My name is Brent Tsuda. I'm the Director of Sales for the Western U.S. over here at Shooter Detection Systems, and I am one of the subject matter experts for active shooter as well as our gunshot detection technology. So today, I don't have a lot of time to present to you guys, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be presenting a little bit of a concise overview of our gunshot detection technology, as well as our integration with CrisisGo and our partnership. So we're real excited about this partnership that we have in place. The combination of our 2 companies and our 2 different technologies is really the recipe for success that works very well within schools as well as corporation and in the commercial side alike. And so we'll be diving a little bit more into what that integration looks like. I think that video that you saw of Kelly's was a great visual to see how quickly and how easily it actually can work. And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into that so you get a little bit of a look under the hood. So right now, of course, we're living in some very unprecedented, unusual times. And really, you know, one of the reasons why we're here today is really to give you guys as much information to help be as prepared as possible for the coming months that are ahead of us as children go back to school, as companies start to reopen up their offices and people go back to work. So this is really all that we can do is be as prepared as possible. And that, of course, is why we're here today. So I like to start out the presentation with a quick question. So one of the questions we get asked a lot is, so why do I need it? Why do we need it? Well, why do we need gunshot detection technology? Well, the answer is really simple. Let me show you. The reason why is because active shooter events are on the rise. If you take a look at this graphic here, this chart, you can see dating back to 1982, there were several years that there were not any mass shootings. But as time has gone on, in particular over the last 10 years, you can see this trend is absolutely on an upward trend. The chart ends in February of this year. Obviously, we had the coronavirus occur, so there's only that one there. But if you look at the trend, it's certainly going up. And that's something that we know will probably most likely continue to trend in that upward direction. Also, when we define a mass shooting, by the way, this is defined by the Department of Homeland Security, excuse me, as being an incident where there's 4 or more people that are killed. So these are the major ones. These are the ones that you're seeing on the news. And these are ones that a lot of folks are obviously talking about. And when we kind of dive in a little deeper, we don't like to get into too much of the weeds in terms of gun sales, but one thing that we can look at, because these are actually recorded, are the actual background checks for people purchasing guns. So these are actually recorded. We know what these numbers are. And if you take a look at this year compared to last year, It's up quite a bit. It's actually through the roof. And so that's definitely a topic of discussion. So since we know that there's a lot more guns out on the street here, we know that there is that sort of possibility of people actually using them. And that, again, is an actual fact. So when we then take a look at the worst mass shootings that have occurred between 1982 and current times, you can see some of these that are on here. These are ones that are notable. These are the ones you guys probably remember hearing about or have even discussed about. And if you look at some of them here in the middle section, you'll notice that of these large mass shootings, 3 of these were schools. Now, kind of like how Kelly talked about, there's certainly a lot that don't happen in schools, but schools is definitely one of the places where some of the most high-profile mass shootings did actually occur. Now, aside from schools, yes, they can occur in restaurants, nightclubs, office buildings. They can occur basically anywhere. No individual place is immune to a mass shooting. And this is exactly, again, why we're talking here today. So the reasons why these active shooter events do occur also is because of current events. And these are the types of situations and scenarios that oftentimes lead people to then embark on a journey of becoming an active shooter. And so certainly we're in the middle of a global pandemic. Social unrest is very high. We've been cooped up and locked up into our homes for quite a long time as well, many, many months. We have this possibility of post-election anger. Unemployment is at record highs. And we've got a lot of situations going on with local law enforcement that are being targeted, as well as this possibility of being, as some folks call it, defunded. So when you put all of this together, this year of 2020 has been a very unusual year. But these are all of the reasons why there's a great likelihood that as people go back to work, as children go back to schools, active shooter events are likely to increase. So that's kind of why, for those reasons, as well as many other reasons, why Shooter Detection Systems was even started, our company. So I'm going to take you back on a little journey, a little bit of a history lesson, going back into the mid-90s. I realize some of you folks on the call may not have even been born yet at that time, but if we go back into the mid-90s, that was when BBN Technologies created and invented the first outdoor gunshot detection system, which is called Boomerang. And you can actually see a picture of it still in use today by the federal government, as well as many public venues, sporting arenas, baseball stadiums, and places of that nature. If you take a look at the picture over on the right side, you can see that it's almost like an octopus-looking type of gunshot sensor, and they're still, again, being used here today. So it was originally started in the mid-90s as a gunshot detection system that we would place onto Humvees that were driving through the Middle East or out there protecting our military folks out in Afghanistan and Iraq. And the Humvees, as they were driving through the desert, potentially at 60 miles an hour, they were able to identify where the snipers were shooting at them from, as far as the distance it was away, as well as the height, the elevation as well. So this is something that helped to save countless military lives. And then if you fast forward into the 2000s, our CEO, Chris Connors, then acquired the rights to that technology from Raytheon and developed it into an indoor gunshot detection system, which we call Guardian. And that's, of course, what we'll be talking about primarily here today. So at the heart of our Guardian gunshot detection system is the sensors. These are the sensors. There's a picture of it right there. It looks almost like a double light switch that you might put on your wall in your house. But this is really, if you kind of think about it, it's almost like a smoke detector or a fire alarm for gunshots. And so these can be placed throughout your facility. And really what this will do is this will help to identify and validate that, yes, there was an actual gunshot that has been shot. And that in and of itself is a very important factor, because similarly to how Kelly was talking about, when a gunshot goes off, a lot of times people don't know if it's a gunshot. They're in denial. They might think somebody else is going to report it. There's a lot of time that elapses. And if you didn't actually see it, the active shooter assailant, then again, you still might think it was some other sound, such as a car backfiring or fireworks or a pile of pans falling in a kitchen. I mean, there's many different sounds that can emulate a gunshot. So this sensor, what this is doing, this has got what we call dual factor authentication. It's going to first listen for the bang of the gun. So that's what those acoustic sensors are going to do. And then followed and confirmed by the flash coming off of the muzzle of the gun. It's going to then see that and through the infrared sensors. And when those two things occur together, then our system, our sensors can definitively tell you that, yes, that was an actual gunshot. And so in terms of the sensor itself, these come in a wireless or a wired setup capability. There's no triangulation or calibration required, and it's able to detect low caliber as well as high caliber rifles. So it doesn't really matter what it is, it's able to detect it. Very mature product as well. And when we talk to our customers, what they tell us that's most important to them is going to be the accuracy, the speed of the alerting, which is under a second, and also the low false alert rate. Again, when you're doing a dual authentication process as opposed to a single authentication process, that for us eliminates that false alert, because we've never had a false alert in over 100 million hours in usage. So when we look at what the actual layout and setup of a system like this looks like and consists of, this is a little bit of an eye chart, but if you take a look at all the sensors on the left side, this is really either your wireless sensors or your wired sensors, and those are going to detect the gunshots that have been shot. Now, all of that, once it detects it, it's going to route that information through our gateway software in the middle, which is what we call our situational awareness application. And then from there, that gateway software can then push out communications and take the next step in communicating out information to whoever needs to know about it. And obviously, one of the different ways to do that is through our CrisisGo integration. So yes, we can communicate out to local law enforcement. Yes, we can pull up video management systems so you can get a physical identification of the actual assailant. Yes, we can do lockdowns with access control systems. But I got to tell you, Kelly is absolutely right when he said the first thing that you want to do is get the message out, even before calling 911. And that's exactly where CrisisGo comes into play. So our integration, we worked on it for quite a long time to perfect it. And I tell you, the combination of these two technologies is your recipe for success. So once the gunshot has been identified, the gateway software can then lean on that integration with CrisisGo, and then CrisisGo can then, in a matter of seconds, send out a push notification, a text message, an email, voice calls. It can do all those sorts of communications to get the word out so people then know exactly what to do next. And in addition to that, they also have the location capability of knowing where the actual active shooter assailant actually is at. And those are all very, very key components in being able to communicate out to folks. So the actual software that we have, the situational awareness application, this is kind of what it looks like here. And what you're looking at is a floor map or floor plan of an actual building. Now, in the case of a school, you might have multiple buildings on that campus. You also might have multiple floors for some schools. If you're in an office building, again, you can have multiple buildings. You can also have multiple floors. So what you're looking at here is just one of the floors, and you can see exactly where the sensors are at, which would be identified as those green circles. And then also, as a gunshot takes place, you can start to see it, which would have this red circle around it, and that circle will also age, because that'll give you what we call a breadcrumb trail, so you can start to see the direction and the path in which the active assailant is actually moving and walking toward. And again, this is all information that can be delivered over to local law enforcement, so when they arrive, they know exactly and specifically where the active assailant is actually at. Now, all this, when we start to look at this, this is really, as I like to say, where the rubber meets the road. This is a great comparison to a situation where an organization, a school, a corporation might have an active shooter gunshot detection system, or they might not. So let's take a look at these two. So up on the top, this is in this horizontal fashion up on the top. This would be a scenario that you might go through if you had an active shooter situation and you did not have a shooter detection system in place. So again, the first thing that's going to happen when a gunshot goes off is, as Kelly discussed, it's that denial stage. And so it's also, in addition to denial, it's confusion. It's wondering, was that actually a gunshot? And do I need to tell somebody about that? Or is somebody else going to do something about that? And should I call 911 immediately? But I don't want to get in trouble, or what are the ramifications if I call and it wasn't a gunshot, or I don't want to be embarrassed or made to look like a fool if it's not. These are all the thoughts that go through people's head. And this is all before even 911 is even called oftentimes. And so if you think about all these little steps, pulling video, if you happen to have a video management system on campus or at your place of business, some sort of communication over possibly a PA speaker, you might then decide, I need to go ahead and send out a communication out. So again, by the time all this has elapsed, you can imagine, you might also be triaging it as a small group of stakeholders in a main office, for example. All this is going to elapse in a time period between 13.5 to 18 minutes on average. That is an absolute eternity when the average active shooter incident lasts around 12 minutes. Okay, so you can kind of see the problem there with the timing in accordance to how long these types of events typically take. Now, if you look at the area on the bottom section there, an organization or a school that has an active shooter detection and CrisisGo in place, this whole scenario can be accomplished, all these steps can all be accomplished in 5 seconds or less. So again, 5 seconds versus 13.5 minutes to 18 minutes, huge difference. How many lives can be lost in 13.5 to 18 minutes? Countless. Will the ability for you to communicate out and get local law enforcement involved in a matter of seconds help to save lives? Absolutely. And that's exactly why this combination of our two technologies together is very, very important. So shooter detection systems, we've been doing this for a long time. Like I mentioned, we've got our sensors out there all across the globe, and they've been used for over 100 million hours since 2015. And we've been serving and supporting many different major industries, obviously including schools, K through 12 schools, higher education, as well as corporations as a whole. But these are some of the different types of organizations that we've certainly helped. Here is a small snapshot of different actual K through 12 schools and school districts that we have been working with. Certainly we have a lot more that we can also utilize as references as well. One of the things that I do like to mention is we do have quite a few references, but there's a lot of clients that we are unable to mention or display or even talk about just due to privacy. And of course, when we're talking about things such as active shooter technology, it's a little bit hush-hush sometimes. One of the things that we also like to talk about that really separates us from any other type of active shooter technology out there are the different certifications and the patents that we have. So shooter detection systems, while we have many certifications in other countries, the ones that are probably most important for us here back home is going to be this Department of Homeland Security Safety Act certification. So this is one that really is involving helping to protect and limit liability for any company, technology company that is developing anti-terrorism technologies like us. So obviously here at Shooter Detection Systems, that's what we do. And one of the great capabilities and benefits of us having this certification is it goes above and beyond just protecting and limiting liability to us. It also extends out to our customers and our integrator dealer partners as well. So again, as you start to look at these types of technologies that are out there for this type of incident, it certainly is helpful to know that if you work with a company like Shooter Detection Systems, it also helps to protect liability and limit the caps and those sorts of things for you as well. So to kind of wrap everything up here, we'd just like to kind of put these these concepts in boxes, and these are the concepts and these are the areas and the topics that most of our customers ask us about, and these are the topics and questions that most folks are looking at when making determinations on the type of technology that they want to go with. So one of the great things that we have to offer is our history, is our experience that we have in doing this, which spans nearly close to 3 decades. We've got a great track record of success. We certainly have the certifications that we talked about, like the Safety Act certification. We've got our actual sensors that have the dual authentication capabilities, not just a single, which is very important to help minimize any sort of false alerts. And like I said, we've had 0 false alerts in over 100 million hours of usage. I do want to mention one thing. When we talk about false alerts, it's very important because if you think about getting any sort of false alert, there's really no room for error here. Even if you get 1 false alert, think about what that means. That means possibly evacuating a whole building. That might mean evacuating a whole school. That might mean, putting a company in a position where they're no longer able to do work because of that. These are all hugely costly and emotionally impactful mistakes that there's really no room for error, and that's exactly why we continue to develop our product, and to date we have not had 1 single false alert. Again, perfect track record. We work with great certified installers if you guys need some assistance. If you guys cannot do it yourself, if you don't have the staff, the resources to do it, we certainly have a very large, vast network of installers that are certified that can help with that process. And then of course we have the certified integrations like CrisisGo. And of course we also have integrations with access control systems as well as video management systems. So if you'd like to integrate deeper and have that level of capability embedded in the solution as well, we certainly have those. And lastly, as I mentioned, we have great customer references that are more than happy to discuss their experience with you if you guys need that sort of assurance. And I believe that is my final slide that I wanted to present here to you guys here today. Hopefully you guys got the sense of the importance of a gunshot detection system, and even more important, you got the sense of having a unified solution with CrisisGo and shooter detection system, that is again your recipe for success going forward. Kendra, I think that's all I have here on my slides here for today.
All right. Thank you so much, Brent, and thank you, Kelly, for the great information. So if anyone has any questions, please type it into the chat, the Q&A, and we'll get to those. I do have a couple that are in, but one of the questions I have to start with, Brent, is one of the questions that's commonly asked about about schools is, if somebody has 100 classrooms, they think, well, then does that mean I need 100 sensors, and then I need sensors here and I need sensors in the lobby? Can you just address, does a school need a gunshot sensor everywhere, or how a school might go about deciding where they're going to lay out the sensors?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the answer is it really depends on how much coverage a customer would like. So it's pretty difficult to cover every single nook and cranny of every facility and building that anybody has. That's just a little bit unlikely. What typically will happen is our customers will look at the high traffic areas. They'll look at areas that are likely to have an active shooter in it. For example, a school campus. Oftentimes we have a lot of schools that will literally put a gunshot detection sensor in the main office and perhaps 1 or 2 other areas. Some of our clients certainly have put them in every campus, in every classroom, but most of them do not. Most of them will put them in some of the main areas as far as where an active shooter they believe will enter in. So it really depends on how much coverage somebody wants, but should they decide to have the whole thing, certainly we can do that. Oftentimes, though, they'll choose the main areas that they believe will be most commonly or most likely to be impacted.
Okay, great, thank you. And one of the questions that just came in, will the sensors give law enforcement personnel the exact location of the incident? So that would be probably a question for both. And I also wanted to mention David Spicuzza from CrisisGo is also on the Q&A to help us out here. So Brent, I'll start with you, and David, you may want to weigh in on that. Does law enforcement receive the exact location of the incident?
Great question. And the answer is yes, absolutely they can. It depends on how the local law enforcement wishes to receive the information. So in our instance, we have our situational awareness software, which is actually free for local law enforcement to have. So they can have, the local law enforcement can have this somewhat almost like a push notification, if you will, to the software which resides over in their dispatch center, and they can see exactly where that occurs. So that is something that is a capability that we allow our clients to then allow their local law enforcement to be able to see. We do have some customers that don't want that to happen that way, and they just wish to be able to be notified themselves first, the customer that is, and then they want to be able to notify local law enforcement. So it just kind of depends on what our customer wants, but to answer your question, yes, they certainly can know the exact location on a campus if that's what our customer would like them to know.
Okay, David, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and thank you, Kendra and Kelly and Brent. Great job. Absolutely. And what would happen within that particular CrisisGo group through the integration, obviously, when we set it up, when that sensor goes off and sets off the CrisisGo system, everybody's going to know that it is an active shooter situation, but everybody's also going to get pulled into that CrisisGo messaging group from the alert, where anybody that could provide additional information can do so directly from there. So while the sensors will certainly be able to do what Brent said, also additional information could be provided with anybody that is set up within that group. So it goes directly to all of the managers, which is essentially the safety team of that particular CrisisGo group, which can be set up by location if that's how you would want to have it set up.
Okay, great. Looks like Brent, we may have lost Brent's audio, but I'm going to move on to Kelly. Kelly, so, we have a lot of schools on the line that want to learn, education about active shooter, practices in general. But in current times, and Brent touched on this a bit, but I'd just like to hear your perspective. People are focused so much on coronavirus and are we going back to school? And when we go back to school, how are we doing it? And the health and virus mitigation piece. So what should schools be thinking of right now with regard to the active shooter threat, or any other threat for that matter?
Yeah, so there's several things, right? First of all, through my many years of emergency management, I've discovered many things, and one of them is generally our public has this mindset. It's not a problem until it's a problem. And that's really not the right mindset to have, because then you're always working in crisis mode. So what we need to start thinking about is this, is our students are coming back at some point. We don't know when that is. Different states, different timeframes. In California, most people a week ago were thinking that it was going to be in January, and that got moved up to the first part of November. So things are changing. So look at what it is that you need to start addressing should kids come back. So you're going to start having to worry about or think about how you're going to keep your students, staff, visitors safe from the coronavirus. And we have an app for that called the Safety iPass. But when you're talking about active shooter and stuff, we have so many different things that are impacting what's going on. And a lot of that is isolation of our students. So people who had emotional issues last year and we weren't able to address them last year have been isolated, and their emotions have been just sort of percolating. So we need to identify those people very quickly. We need to start looking at behaviors that concern us, and we need to start addressing those as quickly as possible. And we should be very vigilant about that. Now, oftentimes we start thinking about, okay, we're in the coronavirus age right now, and how do I drill? How do I work through the training processes that I need to work through, active shooter, fire drills, those things in this kind of environment with the virus? That the fact of the matter is we have to protect our kids and our staff. So work through that with how do you isolate or keep people distant and still get the concepts across. So the first thing that I would implore people to do is contact local law enforcement and their fire department, get them in the same room for this discussion, and ask them how they would do it. Ask them for your for their assistance. Ask them how and why, and try to get a good understanding, because each jurisdiction is going to do it a little bit different. So talk to your emergency responders and help them work through this. That being said, in an actual incident, we have to worry about life safety things first. Life safety is what's more dangerous than the next thing. Is a bullet more dangerous or more impactful to you than a virus? So you have to take that into consideration. So if you went into a lockdown situation, you have to teach them how to do that with or without social distancing. If you're talking about drilling, then we can go through concepts and explain to them, in a real emergency, you would be asked to do this. Right now, we're going to practice this by maintaining social distancing. We're going to do our evacuations, keeping 6 feet apart. We're going to hide underneath our desks 6 feet apart, those types of things. But understand, in a real emergency, we would be probably huddled up in a safe corner or something like that.
That's great advice. Thank you, Kelly. Brent, I'm going to give the next question to you to start with. So a school resource officer is asking, with schools required to do so many drills within a school year, could you use the system, and I'm going to go with the Guardian system, but we can also have CrisisGo weigh in on this. Can we use the system for drills so that teachers are familiar with the system, or maybe other staff?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That is definitely one of the benefits of having a solution in place, so that your drills can be much more realistic. So, so the answer is yes. We have, for the most part, I would say all of our schools and a good portion of our customers will also, that are non-school entities, they definitely use it to do some sort of testing and drilling and that sort of thing at a minimum on an annual basis, if not every 6 months or potentially even more frequently. So yes, and that's one of the great benefits you'll get by having the system in place, is that people do feel much more comfortable with it, and they understand how it works and what their responsibility is as well during these types of events. So yes, the answer is yes.
I will expand on that too, that I don't know that you mentioned our simulation and training tools. So to answer Michael's question a little bit in more detail, from the SDS side, we do have a simulator, which means you can press a button and set off all the same actions that you would have, hear a shot detected, send a text message, send the message out to CrisisGo. So you can do that, and you can also use blanks fire to set the system off. So that's how we do our live fire demonstrations here in our office. We don't have to present an actual weapon into the office, which is obviously something that's very complicated and not something you always want to do in schools. So just to expand on that, David, is there any sort of test mode or any sort of training tools that CrisisGo has?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a drill management tool that actually directly ties in to our alerting. So when we onboard a new customer, the first thing we do is we take their unique emergency response plans and we upload every type of alert that they want to have in the system. So when I click on that particular alert type, it's going to automatically assume that it's a real situation. But before you click the send button, you can actually mark it as a drill. We provide you with a pre and post drill report. But once you're running the drill, everything that happens on CrisisGo gets captured. So I know we didn't reference really any of our or a lot of our other tools, but if I was doing something like accounting for my students or staff members, all of that data would be captured onto that post drill report. So not only is that great information to have to, for whoever it is you have to report to, it gives you that foundation so that you move on your emergency procedures, and also gets the users familiar with using the application.
Hey, David, I'll stay with you then. If even though we're talking about active shooter, just to expand again on the CrisisGo capabilities, Stacy asked, once the schools reopen, how can your technology assist schools with staying open if someone contracted the virus? Can you talk about your safety iPass?
Yeah, absolutely. That wasn't something that we covered today, but really over the past 4 or 5 months, we've sort of rearranged and developed new tools to help our customers and potential customers with reopening. And real briefly, how it works is we can automate emails or have web links set up so that pre-certification can be done prior to coming into the facilities. And that pre-certification will actually give you a color-coded QR code. So if I have a red code, I really shouldn't be attempting to go into the facility that day. If I have a green code, that is going to grant me access into the facility. And just like with the drill reporting, we capture all of that data and provide you with graphs so you can actually track the trends within your communities. So you're a little bit better equipped to make the decisions that you guys have to make around opening or closing when it comes to coronavirus.
All right, great, thank you. Brent, I just got a question in on my personal chat here. Are the sensors wireless or do they have to be wired? Or how are they powered?
Yeah, good question. So we offer both. And so the wireless have been around for a little while now. We originally started obviously with the wired, the PoE sensors. But what we're finding is there's quite a bit of interest in wireless, of course. And I'll just let you know one thing. We're not using like Wi-Fi wireless technology. We're using LoRa, which is long-range wireless technology. So it has a much longer, further reach. And it also enables us to not put these sensors on your normal Wi-Fi network, which would, of course, add some additional, onto resources onto your network. So people tend to like that, but we offer both. And depending on certain types of buildings in certain areas across the country, some might be, historical type of buildings. There might be some sort of government buildings also that have challenges in getting permits to be able to, run wire, drill holes, those sorts of things for wired. So yeah, wireless, pretty popular here today, but we do offer both. Okay.
And I imagine that a lot of the folks we have on the line today probably aren't technical from the schools. So you would be the person that would potentially talk to maybe their IT department. If somebody's on this webinar and wants to know more about all that networking stuff, can they talk to you and have you relay information to their IT department before they decide to look any further? Sometimes that is a requirement.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. That typically is some sort of checkbox that needs to be dealt with and addressed. And so, yeah, certainly more than happy to talk with any IT departments. If that's kind of a point that you guys want us to make, we'll be more than happy to schedule a call and discuss that with them.
Okay, we have gone past the hour, and I just wanted to stay on to answer some of those important questions that came in. So one final question, I think it should be clear, but I just want to make sure that it's clear to the audience. We've talked about active shooter preparedness, we've talked about gunshot detection, we've talked about CrisisGo. So I'll start with you, Brent. Does somebody need to buy both systems? Can they buy one? Can they buy shooter detection on its own? What are the capabilities that shooter detection on its own can do? And David, I'll ask you the same question about CrisisGo.
Great question. So, so the answer is you can purchase our two technologies separately. Part of this presentation here today was really to highlight the fact if you did have both of them, how together it's a very powerful solution. But the answer is you could purchase the two solutions separately. One of the great packages that we also offer is this one package called our Guardian Direct Connect, which is really a package that is a little bit of a smaller deployment, and we've been doing great things with it within school environments, where it actually has a monitoring solution, like a central station that would automatically call certain people or automatically also reach out to local law enforcement as needed as well. So we have some different things that we're able to offer, but yeah, they can be purchased separately if somebody desires to do so.
Okay, and David, so for example, in an active shooter incident, how, if somebody purchased CrisisGo on its own, how does your solution work for them?
Yeah, so we offer our platform in modules. So we have 4 separate modules, and if they were to purchase, they would essentially just need to purchase the rapid response module in order to get all of the alerting, panic buttons, emergency communication, emergency escalation. But like Brent said, the power of the 2 systems combined can really save a lot of time in emergency situations. In terms of security, everything on our platform is encrypted. We are a cloud-based solution. We work directly as an advanced technology partner through AWS, and we do meet all of the compliances in terms of FERPA and COPA.
All right, great. So now it's 2:10, so I think it's time to wrap it up. So I'm going to let everyone go to get back to their busy days. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Kelly and Brent and David for joining us, and obviously thank everybody who's still on the line for joining us today. I hope it was of value to you, to the school districts that are looking for these additional methods and technologies to shore up your security against active shooter and other threats. So if you did type in a question and we didn't get to it live, we will get to you after the webinar. So to our audience, I just hope that you and your community stay healthy, safe and well as the school year progresses. And I just want to thank everyone and let you all go and have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.